Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Hello everyone, welcome back to this 12-week course on circular economy for sustainable buildings. So we have seen what is linear economy, what is circular economy. In the last class I slightly touched upon circular economy when it comes to building materials. Today we will look at circular economy in the built environment. Now, what is the impact of the built environment? What are we doing? So, what we are doing is we are actually extracting materials at a very rapid pace of 100 billion tons a year, which is thrice of what we did in 1970. So, look at the amount of extraction of these resources for design of buildings and infrastructure. Look at the amount of cement, steel, aluminum, aggregates, insulation products, all of this that we are extracting is causing a very heavy toll on our planet. Not only that, you look at the largest natural resource user and the total mass which is surpassed by living organism. So, what are we actually also doing is the biodiversity is also getting affected by the way we are extracting and exploiting the planet. Therefore, it is imperative now that we look at various other options through a project's life cycle to make it more sustainable, and for that we have to make sustainable choices at every step. Now, the choices we make will determine how durable that particular asset is or how adaptable it is and how easy this process will be. So, our challenge as designers is to try and live more like a Lego-like life, in which we can break up those parts and reconfigure and create new structures from old structures. This will surely ease the pressure on extraction of new sources. Because this becomes very important, because we are responsible for over half of global carbon emissions, climate change and ocean acidification, because of the choices we make as designers and architects. Now, if you look at the habitat destruction, water stress, biodiversity loss, all of this is related to how we are using the land. So, what is the role of circular economy in all this? Circular economy becomes critical because of the scale and longevity of buildings that we design. The amount of buildings we are designing, the scale of the building, and are we really considering the building to be designed for longer years? Are we looking at 100-year life span of the building? No, that is also getting reduced. Also, beyond material use, we should start focusing on maximizing the asset and creating a system value. So, the built environment is everything that we have built, and that includes buildings and infrastructure, all of urban spaces, also the landscape and spaces between the building. So, all of this should get into the domain of circular economy by means of how we design and build our buildings and infrastructure. So, The circular economy in built environment becomes important because we will be able to have better outcomes within the boundaries of this planet. This planet has only limited resource, and we will be able to deal with that easily if we try to shift towards circular economy. This also requires a change to whole systems and also radical rethinking of our economic model. For example, few years back when we had purchased a car, we wanted a different kind of wheel for the car. We had not even picked the car from the showroom yet. The car was there in the showroom and we said, can we have a different wheel set for this car? They said, okay sir, you buy 4 new wheels and you the existing wheel which has not even moved 1 millimeter, they said they will take it out and throw it away. I mean, that is such a it's such a sin actually to do that. Of course, we said no, we don't want all that, and we drove it with whatever wheels were available. But I'm saying that should not be the attitude and that should not be the approach of manufacturers. At least as architects, let us not do that. So, we need to be radical thinkers and create new economic models and also make active choices and a collective action for such a transformation to happen. And the main aim of that is to reduce the resources that we use, because we have only finite resources. So when you look at the technical cycle or technical process which involves use of finite sources such as building materials, what you should do is, when you use that finite resource, try to maintain, reuse, which means minimize the use of materials that are toxic, minimize the use of energy in processing the materials, and use renewable energy, and also try to recycle. So, this will ensure that you prioritize secondary materials from re-entering the economy, and you can maximize waste prevention and minimize residual waste and pollution. If you are looking at the biological processes, then what you should do is, you should maximize the value of materials, products, assets, and systems in use, restore and regenerate all the natural environment, not just the part that provides renewable sources, and prioritize the use of well managed renewable resource. Because of this, you will be able to gain more value from few resource, irrespective of the nature of resource, all of which will comprehensively end in having a reduction in the use of material in a system. And this can be done by architects as well as urban designers or planners. Then, if you look at circular economy principles in construction, you should first understand that the building and the construction sector is a very important driver of global economy. Lot of economy is generated because of the building and construction sector, and the environmental impact that it causes is actually devastating to some extent, because about 37% of CO2 emissions is caused by the buildings and construction sector, and 50% of global material extraction. Also, this sector contributes to 11% to 13% of global GDP. Now, it is estimated that by 2050, we will need 50% more buildings, and therefore the building sector still gives us lot of scope, challenge and opportunity for sustainable growth. Now, we need to follow circular economy in construction, and we should start emphasizing efficient use of resource, elimination of waste and material value retention throughout the life cycle of the building. Now, the CBE focuses on three key areas. First is efficient use of existing buildings. So, what it means is we should start extending the life of the buildings through retrofitting, adaptive reuse and flexible use of spaces. So, efficient use of existing buildings means we can extend the life of the building through retrofitting, adaptive reuse and flexible use of spaces. All of this I will be taking in detail in the forthcoming classes. The second one is reuse and recycling of building materials. So, by doing this, we will promote the reuse of building material, we will promote recycling and the use of industrial and agricultural byproducts to reduce the requirement of virgin materials. And third is we should promote long service life in new construction. So, supporting material efficiency and life cycle thinking in new projects will ensure that we start looking to design products which have longer life and less impact on the environment. Then, what are the other things that we should do in order to have circular economy in the built environment? So, first is maximize reuse including refurbishing and repurposing. So, reuse your existing buildings or assets, recover materials and products on site or even from your another or adjacent site. Third is share materials or products for onward reuse. Second strategy is design the building for optimization. What do you mean by designing for optimization? Design the building for longevity or design the building for flexibility, design the building for adaptability, design the building for assembly, disassembly and recoverability. All of this will be taken or dealt in detail in the forthcoming classes. Then third is use standardization. This is very important. When you start standardizing, you start making modular elements in buildings which are created with less waste and you can also reuse it later. For example, modularity, for example, wheels of a chair. We have these swivel chairs. If we have the modular wheels, then any wheel can fit into any chairs. But if you start customizing those, then it becomes difficult. For example, size of tiles. You can have few standard tile sizes. But if you start having too many variations, then it becomes a problem. Or the case which I have always been referring, using a refill inside a ballpoint pen. Now, if we have modular sizes of pens, then you can use any refill into any of the pens. So, this becomes very important and therefore standardization is an important criteria. Next is products to be used as a service and client as a user, not a consumer. So, we should have systems where materials are treated as service and the contractor will pay for the service of using materials, not for the materials themselves. So, it is the same material which is going from site A to site B. So, the contractor will pay for service of using the material, not for the material itself, because we are not looking at virgin materials. And then fifth is minimize the impact and waste. So, use low impact new materials, then use recycled material or secondary material, and then learn to design out waste, and also learn to design to reduce construction impact. So, when you start looking at circular economy in the built environment, you should start to design such that there is flexibility, modularity, durability. There is provision for design for disassembly and avoiding waste, as well as green procurement. In the construction process, you should prevent, reduce, reuse byproducts, as well as start recycling, use off-site fabrication. During the operation of the building, look at maintenance including digital information logs, sharing facilities and space, and also recycling. During renovation and retrofitting stage, use smart innovation and retrofit and imaginative reuse of the waste materials. Besides, when you end up demolishing, during demolition, look at a pre-demolition plan. That's very important. What will you do? How will you demolish the building and things like that? Use selective and soft stripping techniques. Look at sorting, reusing and recycling. Also, manufacturing of building products should include durable, repairable and recyclable products, as well as recycled materials with end of waste. So, in no in the when you look at architecture, how can we use circular economy? These are the ways. Now, how to enable circular economy in the built environment? This diagram shows how we as architect can be enablers in the construction process, where what we can do is we should collaborate and have an early engagement with all the stakeholders: client, building manufacturing sector, construction no contractors, also the laborers. How are you looking at secondary materials market? Somebody is demolishing the building. That person should also be aware that he should not demolish in such a way that none of the materials are salvageable. And you as an architect and designer should also have that sort of how we can go and salvage those materials. So, you need to establish a marketplace for secondary construction material, because this system will enable you to cross barriers and start establishing policy and market based solution for built environment industry, so that we start shifting from linear economy to circular system. And this will also start encouraging a shift in the way we perceive buildings, in the way we design buildings, in the way users designs, in the way users experience spaces. Okay, then third is architecture practices can be characterized by circular economy design principles. So, this is where architects and designers have a larger part, whereas if you look at all of these put together, it is about systemic change for circular economy. Then if we look at green contracts and leases, it means we need to expand the use of these contracts and leases to include circular economy. Then tax and legislation, not really in the hands of the architects, but we can push for tax, legislation, policy systems that can direct the industry and markets towards circularity. And then we can also have some green financing. The greener you are building, the more finance you could get or easier to get, and this will stimulate business support for a circular economy. And then we can start enabling the industry to measure the progress by having certain metrics, benchmarks and indicators. Most important is education, which I am trying to give a small part to all of you, with the hope that you will also spread this word to your students or probably apply it in your industry. Educating practitioners and decision makers with the necessary knowledge to be able to implement circular economy more widely, and having no shame in using a secondary product, or how they call today, pre-loved product. So how do we enable this in the built environment? First is collaboration and early engagement. So you can turn the highly linear and fragmented construction process which we have today into a more collaborative approach, enabling circularity. Now this early collaboration can ensure that we are able to share knowledge and information across project stages for maximum impact. We can have a shared vision and link early and late project stages, and this can be a key to overcoming barriers. We can also involve in demolition contractors early so that we can design for disassembly and support circular economy goals. That is what I mean by collaboration. Collaboration means you have to also collaborate with contractors or building materials, industry, so that you are able to dismantle the building rather than demolish the building. So, property evaluating retention over demolition can also increase the likelihood of retrofitting. Then next is stakeholder actions, which is say client actions. So, we need to appoint demolition contractors, or I would call it as dismantlers or dismantling contractors. Then very important, architects, engineers, developers and owners. So you need to engage contractors and demolition experts very early in the design stage with salvaged materials so that you are able to optimize procurement. Then you perform early structural reviews to assess material quality, if it is suitable for reuse or not. The material may not be suitable for reuse. What is the point? Then third is, have contractors and manufacturers also into your confidence. Try to explore secondary or regenerative materials and adopt performance based procurement practices. We should call for industry wide actions and share best practices and challenges in order to improve processes like procuring reused materials and promoting the industry learning. So you need to have collaboration between deconstruction and main contractors, client, design team to identify reuse in the end of first life. You need to have investors who are willing to give a loan for such kind of construction activity. You should also allow contractors to work with supply chain and secure materials needed. Reused options can take longer than new. When it comes to this design stage, most important for us, you should allow design team, client and contractor to work together to procure secondary materials and implement circular design principle. So, collaboration is very, very important. Then let us look at what is the secondary materials market. So, no, the marketplace for materials and construction products that had a previous life is called as the secondary materials market. If we have a very strong and robust secondary material market, it can simplify the procuring reused material strategy, making it a very viable alternative to new products. Besides, we will also have wide availability in the market, and the risk of procuring these materials will also be fairly less. So, how can we do that? What are the approaches? First is we can have reuse hubs. This can be for smaller or simpler materials like brick, steel, insulation, and then we can have manufacturer schemes. This is best for technical products like refurbished lighting, floors, and partitions. And as I had already been telling you, we should also have materials passport. We'll look at this in slightly greater detail later. But what is its purpose? The purpose is to track construction materials through a database to ensure provenance and refurbishment cycles, thus boosting buyer confidence in secondary market. This is beneficial to us because it provides detailed building composition data for deconstruction. It enables reuse by informing designers about future material availability. It also supports track and trace systems for designing buildings with available secondary materials. So, how is the secondary material market of interest to a designer? Because this designer is going to procure secondary materials through these hubs, reuse hub, and design to the availability of secondary material, not design something and search for a material. Then you could end up using the virgin material, and this is a very important principle of circular economy which can be got by collaboration and early engagement. Then if we look at the secondary material market and stakeholder action, we can have certain policy action. So, it is to create a national second hand material database and incentivize markets. Next is mandate pre-demolition surveys to identify what all items can be reused or salvaged. Then support reuse hubs and circular construction services locally. When it comes to industry, how can the industry act? How can developers act? Developers can prioritize reuse, conduct audits, and plan for material storage and retrieval. We can also use material passports for traceability. As architects and engineers, we can specify reused materials and design for disassembly. Also, as a contractor and demolition team, we can look at recovery of reusable materials and follow reuse audits. Besides, all manufacturers can provide take back schemes and material passports, and all the stakeholders can share reuse benefits as well as cost savings with their project teams. So, this is one way of collaboration. Also, if we look at circular economy design principles, now an architecture characterized by reversible connections can allow buildings as well as parts of the buildings or components to be dismantled or taken apart in such a way that it allows for future reuse, and it can lengthen the building's life by being flexible and adaptable. So, deconstructible architecture is the way to be, where we use reversible connections to enable easy material reuse without any damage. So, you design in layers based on lifespan. For example, you can have long lasting structure with short life services. Should focus more on flexibility and adaptability to avoid premature demolition and support circular design. Then the policy actions. Then one very important aspect, or almost the last aspect of enabling circular economy in built environment, is education. We need to start empowering architects, designers, decision makers with necessary knowledge to be able to implement circular economy more widely within their work, and raising awareness more widely and on what can be done, what is achievable. We should also start sharing best practices and educate stakeholders. We should create a unified vision for a circular economy and investing capacity building through conducting trainings, workshop, hands-on learning, and so on. Most important is we should promote industry-wide collaboration. Otherwise, it's just not going to happen. All the stakeholders have to come together. Now, if we look at circular economy in other sectors, what are the options? So, circular economy can be applied to many sectors. Built environment is something which is of most important to us, and therefore I had focused this class on it. But it is also applicable to organic materials and bio-waste sector, energy sector, electronics and ICT sector, packaging and plastic sector, textile industry. So much of clothes we just discard like that, and water, largely on most of the resource based sector. Largely on most of the resource based sector, this is applicable. So, here I have shown in this picture what are the design approaches. The design approaches can be to design to create value. So, design to integrate value, design for quality, design to preserve value, which is done by durability, viability, serviceability, design to recover value, which is design for disassembly, separability, accessibility, and restorability. Thus, we can use circular economy in the built environment in all of these manners. So, with this, I will stop today's class, and we will continue next class with another topic pertaining to circular economy. Thank you.